Hello there, my boonies. In an effort to straighten out many questions, keep us organized for the trial, I have put together something for you all. Me and my ADHD, we've put together a little schedule for you guys so you can see exactly what occurred and when it occurred and how many days that George was in custody during each of these events. Now, really quickly, we're going to go through each one of these. I'm going to read the arrest record. We won't be playing any body cam on this one. It's strictly just talking about each of these incidents and trying to keep them straight, okay? What I want to bring up is that if you'll notice here, July 25th of 2018 was the first call, right? And then everything is fine for a year. And then all of a sudden, within 3 days of each other, you have 2 incidents. And within another month or 2, you've got another incident. And in a couple of days, you've got another incident. I just don't understand what the buildup was that caused these things to occur. I mean, we could go by what Sarah says in her interrogation. If you guys want to believe anything she says, you can go by that. I think there was much more to it than that. I think that she craves attention. And I kind of wonder if her, let's see, was she bored? Was life not exciting enough for her? So she decides she's going to call the cops on George. You can be the judge of that. But what I'm going to give you today is the breakdown and the details. I'd like to say these are facts because they're coming from the police report. But each police report is made up of things that are said by Sarah. And George never wanted to report her. So there's hardly anything that George ever says about Sarah. Only once or twice does he mention it in these reports. So let's get to it. According to a report that I ran on George, prior to these arrests, the only thing on his record was Philadelphia traffic violations in July of 2009. And it looks like it was a traffic accident. And he got a ticket for not driving safely. On July 25th, 2018, at 1:52 hours, Deputy Zito, responded to 4748 Fritz Lane, Apartment 3, Orlando. Reference: a male kicked a female in the eye. I later determined this to be an aggravated battery by strangulation and battery case, both being dating violence. Upon my arrival, I spoke to Sarah Boone. Sarah stated that she was at an unknown bar earlier in the evening when she asked an unknown male for a cigarette. Her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr., of a year and a half, became upset since she was talking to another male and he left the bar. They both went back to their residence located at 4748 France Lane and continued verbally arguing. Sarah was dragged upstairs by George and she was kicked in the right eye using his right heel. Sarah was unable. Okay, this is something that I find interesting. If he's dragging her up the stairs, how does he get to kick her in the eye? How does he physically do that? He's dragging her up the stairs and then he kicks her in the eye. To me, when you think about that situation, he's going up the stairs and she's following him, grabbing after him, and he kicks her. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. How could he be pulling her upstairs with his hands, the upper part of his body, and then the lower part of the body, he kicks her in the face? It doesn't make sense. Sarah was unable to describe how she fell to the ground and or how she was dragged upstairs by George. Sarah refused medical treatment. Sarah refused to write a statement and or sign any dating violence paperwork. After I spoke with Sarah, I spoke to George. George verbally stated they were both at their residence verbally arguing and have been consuming alcohol. They have been dating for a year and a half and residing together for 1.2 years. George attempted to go upstairs to avoid Sarah. While George was walking upstairs, Sarah reached towards George's throat using both of her hands. Sarah placed both of her hands around George's throat and applied pressure to the extent that George was having difficulty breathing. George was sitting on the steps and started kicking towards Sarah in an attempt to get her off of him. George believes he might have kicked Sarah in her face, but was not sure. George believed that if he did not kick Sarah off of him, she would have made him incapacitated due to being strangled. George refused medical treatment. George also refused to write a statement and or sign any dating violence paperwork. Both Sarah and George stated they had been dating for approximately 1 year and 6 months and residing together for approximately 1 year and 2 months. The left side of George's neck had red markings and small abrasions that is consistent with being strangled. Sarah's right eye is bruised and swollen from receiving an impact. Both Sarah and George allowed Deputy Ramirez Delgado to take pictures of their injuries. Deputy Delgado later uploaded the pictures to DataWorks. Both Sarah and George received a victim's right booklet with my name and case number, along with a photo injunction referral. Due to conflicting statements and injuries on both Sarah and George, I was unable to determine who the primary aggressor was. I placed both George and Sarah under lawful arrest and searched. George was placed in the back seat of my patrol car, and Sarah was placed in the back seat of Detective Ramirez Delgado's patrol car. I informed both Sarah and George the charges that are being placed against them, which they stated they understood. Due to both parties refusing to write statements and or signing any domestic violence documents, I was unable to complete a victim's request of confidentiality form, authorizing for release of confidential information form, and written statements. Both parties stated that they don't want to testify and or prosecute against each other. Both Sarah and George were transported to the Orange County Booking and Receiving Center. George was booked and charged for battery. Sarah was booked and charged for aggravated battery by strangulation. Both Sarah and George stated they do not own any firearms. Thank God. My body-worn camera was activated. A probable cause determination is hereby made that the defendant committed the crimes charged in the complaint. And then over here it says no hostile, special conditions of his release. No hostile or violent contact with the victim. He is to report with he's supposed to do random drug tests within 24 hours. He cannot consume any alcohol or drugs, and he cannot possess any weapons or firearms. This is where George claims indigenous so that he could get a public defender. He states on here that his take-home income was $400 weekly. See, I think he was helping Sarah pay for it. We also think he was supposed to be sending money to his wife in Pennsylvania to help with the kids. I don't know if he was. He could have been. He might. I know there was some uproar about him not sending enough, or he wasn't sending any. So we really don't know how much he sent, or if he even did send anything. Or was this $1,200 a month go into helping Sarah with the house, groceries? We know they were buying alcohol with it. We know Sarah smoked. I don't know if George did. That's a huge expense in itself, is smoking cigarettes. Sarah had a car, probably had a car note. Maybe she didn't have a car note because her vehicle was a 2011. So she may not have had a car note, but we know she had to have insurance on the vehicle. And Florida insurance, auto insurance is ridiculous too. It's ridiculously expensive. Looks like here, according to this indigent paperwork, he had a bank account and that was about it. Let's look at the release order. Your first office appointment is Wednesday, August the 1st, 2018 at 9:45 a.m. He was to report to the Corrections Administration Building in Orlando. Please allow 2 hours for the completion of this initial appointment. You are required to report as directed by your supervising officer and in compliance with the court order. Future appointments will be scheduled with your supervising officer on your first office visit. It's got to be probation, right? It's got to be a probation officer. He had to bring $17, which was due on his first visit, and he's supposed to abide by the following release conditions set by the court. I will not leave the state of Florida without permission. I will give written notice to the clerk of courts and supervising officer within 24 hours for a change of address or telephone number. I will appear for all court dates scheduled unless otherwise excused by the court. I will provide my supervising officer proof the court has excused my appearance in court, and I will not violate any criminal statute of any jurisdiction. Further saying that I will abide by the following special conditions set by the court. No hostile or violent contact with the victim. Submit to random drug test within 48 hours. Do not possess, consume any alcohol, and do not possess or own any weapons or firearms. I will attend required court date of August 23rd, 2018. And they let him go. So we know that he then went into court, and the attorney that was on his case had to withdraw. Oh, goodness. Robert Wesley. And if you're wondering why I'm laughing, because Robert Wesley was the first guy assigned to Sarah on her case. Bless his heart. He was the first and third attorney assigned to Sarah on her case, and he had to conflict out, but he's conflicting out here. Let's see what the reasons are. Robert Wesley did work with Sarah. So he represented her in 2018. This is dated August the 21st of 2018. It says, from the investigation which has been made, it is of the opinion of the writer that this case is not suitable for prosecution. This action is taken to clear the records and to release subject's bond if he has any. And I believe this is because Sarah refused to testify against him. They didn't have a case. DJ O'Neill at 17:08 hours responded to 4748 France Lane, apartment 3 for a battery call. When I arrived on scene, I spoke to Sarah Boone, who stated that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, struck her. Sarah stated that she was beaten up, face, head, legs, and arms. Is this the one where she's on the sidewalk? I don't think so. No, because I think that was 2018. Sarah stated that she begged George to stop, and George stated, "You are going to die." Sarah stated that George punched her in the head and flung her off the bed. Sarah stated this incident occurred due to George being upset about Sarah talking to a male. Sarah stated that she had been dating George for 2.5 years. I observed a lump that was red in color on the left side of Sarah's face under her hairline. She also had scratches on the right side of her neck. Sarah stated the lump was caused by George punching her. She was not sure if the scratches were from today. Sarah provided a sworn written statement. She desires prosecution and will testify in court. Sarah completed a domestic violence worksheet and was provided a victim's right pamphlet. I then spoke with George. I observed scratches on the right side of George's neck. I asked George how he received the scratches. George stated that he did not know. I then secured George into handcuffs without incident and placed George into the back of my vehicle. I then read George his Miranda warnings from my issued Miranda warnings card. George agreed to speak with me. George stated that he did not strike Sarah and that Sarah did not strike him. So he's probably lying. I took photos of both Sarah and George's injuries and uploaded them into DataWorks. So again, we're going to see those in court. Both Sarah and George refused medical attention due to Sarah and George being involved in a dating relationship for 2.5 years and George striking Sarah, causing visible injuries. I placed George under arrest for battery. And it says my body-worn camera was activated. No further information at this time. $2,000 bond? Would that be $200? Is it 10%? No contact directly or indirectly with the victim. Do not possess any weapons or firearms. Do not possess or consume any alcohol. Do not return to the scene of the event. He was assigned a public defender. It says, even if the victim wishes to have contact with you, the defendant must not have any contact with the victim until the court changes this no contact order in writing. Then we have his indigency paperwork. 2019, he's claiming he only makes $350. He makes $50 less a week than he made a year before that, which puts him at $1,100 a month. Yeah, 10%, $200 for bond. And this is the one where his mom bailed him out, Blanca I. Torres. Now, there is a first appearance information sheet here, but it's locked. I don't know why. The defendant will be detained without bond because he revoked his rights to release the above style cause and orders that the... Okay. Oh, look who it is. Robert Wesley. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. Man, this guy gets around. Robert Wesley did defend George, I'm sorry, in June of 2019. He probably never really had to defend Sarah in 2018 because they refused to cooperate with the courts, so the courts dropped all the charges on both of them. We know this, right? This allowed Wesley to come in 2019 and represent George, which now takes us back to why he refused to represent Sarah in 2020. All right. See, I love how we're answering these questions and getting everything done. I love this. The accused was arrested. His bond on the battery case was revoked, and the accused is currently being held with no bond on the battery case. Sarah Boone has reached out to the defense and will sign a declination of prosecution and does not wish to testify against the accused and is seeking to remove the no contact order in this case. That if released, the accused will reside, that he's going to move home with his mom. But that before the arrest, the accused was working as a manager at Ace Hardware for 4 years. Also states that he financially supports his children who are currently living in Philadelphia. Also says that he has lived in Florida for 6 years and that the accused has informed the defense that he does not have a criminal record, which was true because the charges in 2018 had been dropped. Motion to modify the no contact order. Again, we've been over this, but I'm going to read it again. The defendant, Jorge Torres, release conditions are no direct or indirect contact with the alleged victim. Entitled to such conditions because the alleged victim desires that the no contact condition be modified to no hostile contact. The undersigned has contacted Sarah Boone and she requests that no contact order be modified to no hostile contact. It says that in there twice. The undersigned will produce Sarah Boone at a hearing set by this honorable court to testify as to the modification of the no contact order. Before me, the undersigned authority and officer duly authorized to administer oaths. This day personally appeared. The undersigned, after being duly sworn, deposes and says that I am the alleged victim and complaining witness against the above named individual. I am by execution of this document advising the state's attorney's office of Orange County, Florida, that I do not desire the case to be prosecuted further and request the charges to be dismissed. She signed that on June the 25th of 2019. The bond order came up again, and it looks like his mama did finally bail him out with $200. And this was at 1 p.m. on July the 17th. July the 2nd, 2019 was when this hearing was held. The victim in this case was present, Sarah Boone, sworn and testified. Event type motion to modify conditions of release is hereby granted. No contact order is modified to no hostile contact with the victim. Do not consume or possess any alcohol or non-prescription drugs. And he's not allowed to live with Sarah anymore. Looks like he just pays the fees, right? Is that all he does? Pay the fees and then he's out? All right. This is the incident from June the 18th of 2019. On June 18th of 2019, at approximately 7:21 hours, I responded to France Lane, apartment 3, in response to credit card fraud, later determined to be a violation of pretrial release conditions for domestic violence battery. When I arrived on scene, I met with Sarah Boone, who stated the following. Sarah and Jorge Torres, Jr. had been living together at the above address and had been in a physically intimate relationship for approximately 2.5 years. Sarah had gotten into a fight with George on June 15th of 2019, which resulted in George being arrested for domestic violence. George was released on June the 16th with pretrial release conditions from the Honorable Judge Maureen A. Bell. Part of those conditions stipulated that George was to have no form of contact with Sarah. On June 18th of 2019, George went to Sarah's residence and made contact with her. Sarah stated she did not invite George to her residence, but did not deny him access in. While Sarah was upstairs with a friend, I wonder who was upstairs. I didn't think Sarah had any friends. Sarah stated George took a credit card of hers and left the residence. During the time that George and Sarah have been together, George has used her credit cards on multiple occasions, and Sarah has allowed him to do so. Sarah uttered to me the fact that George was on pretrial release conditions for battery. When I questioned her about what the conditions included, she told me he was not to have any form of contact with her while the battery case was active. I inquired with her about her letting George contact her and be at her residence. At this point, Sarah became uncooperative with my investigation because she did not want George to be arrested. Sarah refused to provide me with a sworn written statement. I attempted to locate George at both his parents' residence and his workplace at the Ace Hardware. He was not at either location. Later on June 18th of 2019, at approximately 13:22 hours, I was dispatched to 4748 France Lane, Apartment 3, in reference to a verbal argument. When I arrived, I met with Sarah, who told me that George had returned to the residence and was currently inside. I made contact with George, who stated he went to see Sarah in reference to the events earlier. He stated he knew he was on pretrial release conditions and was not supposed to be in contact with Sarah. I arrested George for violating his pretrial release conditions. George was secured in handcuffs, checked for proper fit, and double locked. I placed George in the rear prisoner transport section of my vehicle. He was transported to BRC without incident. This is the video where she comes running out to the cop like, oh, it's the same guys. Hi. We know she was drunk. See, that's the one thing I don't like about these police reports. I guess they can't put this in the police reports because they didn't give her a breathalyzer. We saw the video. We know that she seemed intoxicated. Why can't they say she seemed intoxicated? Let's see. They put him out on $200 bond. This is the violation of his pretrial conditions on domestic violence case. Probable cause determination is hereby made that the defendant committed the crimes charged in the complaint. No contact directly or indirectly with the victim. Maintain separate residence. Do not return to the scene of the offense. Now, it does say here, defendant out on bond in this previous case, which was on 2/15, and that the bond was revoked. He signed off that he wouldn't have contact with her, telephone, email, anyway, in any way, shape, or form. Again, claiming indigency. Now, on this particular form, he's now making between $250 to $300. And on these particular charges, Robert Wesley is again his public defender. Actually, this is pretty dang important. This was 7 months prior to his death, and he was shown at a height of 5'4", weighing 120 pounds. Now, he was due back in court on these charges on August the 1st of 2019. Then on 23rd of July, 2019, a written plea of not guilty and a waiver of arraignment. Case held in abeyance. I'm Googling this, and it means a case held in abeyance means that activity has been temporarily suspended while another proceeding is resolved. Okay. In legal terms, a plea of abeyance is a conditional guilty plea that is held in abeyance while the defendant meets certain conditions. If the defendant meets the conditions, the charges are dropped and the defendant avoids a conviction on their record. Okay. In some cases, the plea in abeyance can lower the degree of the offense, such as reducing a felony to a misdemeanor. Then we jump up. Well, let's see, we got a notice of change of address. I have a feeling that is because he was moving to his mom's house. Yeah. Order revoking pretrial release, ordering pretrial detention on 8/29 of 2019. And why is that? Because on August 28th of 2019, there was another call by Sarah. This right here is the result of it. Oh, they set the bond at $3,000. So now they have to pay $300 to get him out. Recommitment to custody form. Okay. Here, I think, is what happened. He went in on August 28th. They let him get bonded out on the 30th. But then they say, on September the 9th, after this September 4th arrest from Sarah, they put him in the pen. So they said, okay, he bonded out, but he got rearrested. And as of the September the 9th, he's back in jail. This is how those actions reflected this particular arrest. On August the 28th of 2019, I responded to France Court, Winter Park, Florida, in reference to a battery. Upon my arrival, I made contact with the victim, who did not require any medical attention. The suspect was placed under arrest and transported to BRC. My investigation revealed the injuries were victim had marks on the left side of her neck. Photographs were taken. Again, should be coming out in court, I'm sure. Both victim and suspect were photographed, so both of them were. Very well. Good, good, good. Other evidence obtained? No. Suspect was arrested. Sarah Boone intentionally touched and struck the victim. Well, I think what they meant to say is Jorge Torres touched and struck the victim, Sarah Boone, against her will. The victim is a household member of the defendant due to the fact that they presently reside together as if a family and are currently residing in the same single dwelling unit. On August the 28th, 2019, at approximately 2014 hours, I responded to Apartment 3, France Court, within Orange County, Florida, in reference to a battery. Upon my arrival, I met with the victim/reporter of the incident, Sarah Boone, whom I identified via Florida's driver's license, and she told me the following in a verbal and sworn written statement. On August the 28th, 2019, at approximately 2000 hours, Sarah Boone was in her bedroom sleeping when George woke her up coming into the bedroom screaming and angry. George continuously punched Sarah Boone in the neck and pulled her hair. Sarah Boone threw George off the bed when she feared he was going to bang her head on the marble windowsill. Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres have been dating since March of 2016 for approximately 3 years and have no children in common. During my interactions with Sarah Boone, she appeared angry. She was upset, continuously apologizing, and stated how fed up she was with being hit. I did observe marks on her left side of her neck just under her jaw and an old bruise on her right eye that she said happened 3 days ago. Sarah declined an offer of medical treatment on the scene and prior to my arrival. I took digital photographs of Sarah's injuries and submitted them into evidence under the case number. Sarah Boone said she is not willing to testify or prosecute for this incident. I provided Sarah with a booklet containing the legal rights and remedies notice to victims and a business card containing the case number for this incident. During my interactions with George, whom I identified via his Florida identification card, he appeared acted as if he was surprised to see deputies. I observed redness by his left eye. Jorge Torres declined an offer of medical treatment on the scene. I took digital photographs of Jorge Torres' injuries and submitted them into evidence under this case number. I explained to George his Miranda rights and asked if he was willing to speak with me about this incident. Jorge Torres replied yes. I asked George what had happened tonight, and he continued to act surprised that I was talking to him. When asked George what happened to Sarah, he stated, "I do not know." When I asked how she got the marks on her neck, he alluded to the fact that he gets hit all the time, and what is he supposed to do? When I said he should call the police, he said he would not call the police on her. I asked if he gave her the marks in self-defense, and he said no. I asked if he hit her because she hit him, and he did not answer. I asked again what happened tonight, and he did not answer. I placed George under arrest for battery, domestic violence, and transported him to the booking and receiving center without incident. There is no additional information at this time. You know, one reason why George might not have wanted to report Sarah, we know how George played with her son a lot when he would come over and he was seen outside with him on his bike and stuff. And it just seemed like he spent more time with him outside than Sarah did. Maybe George didn't want to report Sarah because he was afraid that Brian would try to remove any legal rights of custody that he had with him. He didn't want her to not be able to see her son again. It's a thought that I didn't have before. I kept trying to figure out why. I don't know. I just kept thinking, like, why doesn't he report her? Does he care about her that much that he just doesn't want her to go to jail? You know, the other side of it is too, well, I know if I get put in jail, I know she'll come and get me out as soon as I go to jail. So if she's in jail, I'm not going to get out as quick. I don't know. You know, those types of things are going through my head. I don't know if that's the case. And we're just going to look through the docket on this really quick. Now, it says that the bond was set at $500. And upon being released on bond, he was to have no contact with Sarah, directly or indirectly. He was to maintain a separate residence. He was allowed to go back to the apartment with law enforcement to get his belongings only. And they have a little thing here says that the victim sworn and testified. We've seen this over and over again on the cases with them. He claimed indigency again. And in this particular form of claiming indigency, he said he only made $235 weekly. It did say that he had total liabilities and debts in the amount of $800. I don't know what that is. On the August 28th event, he had a $100 bond. It says $500, but then it says $100 for the bond to be taken out. So he got out on the 30th of August, only to be rearrested again on September 4th when she called on him again. And then, of course, on 9/5, the court made the record, revoking his bond. So back to jail he went. When they got him in jail, either on the 4th or the 5th, he stayed there after that case. Recommitment to custody, yeah. The defendant was placed in the Orange County Corrections Department on the 9th of September, 2019. From the investigation which has been made, it is the opinion of the writer that the case is not suitable for prosecution. This action is taken to clear the records and to release subject's bond, if any, has been posted responsive to the charges. If in custody, the defendant shall be released. But he stayed in jail because the previous charges were still there, because I show that he wasn't released until October the 18th. So it just so happens that this particular incident, he was discharged. That she separated herself from the incident. Now, this is what she told police officers. Sarah advised that on that evening of September the 4th of 2019 that she was at her residence located at 4748 France Lane, apartment number 3, sleeping in her bedroom upstairs when her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, the defendant, kicked open the bedroom door, and in parentheses it says, for the 4th time, and began cursing at her. Sarah advised George was upset because she was not downstairs. Sarah advised that she repeatedly asked and begged George to leave, and he punched her in the left ear and side of her head. Sarah advised that she decided to choose her battles and went downstairs with George. Sarah advised that George continued to call her names, so she ran off barefoot to her old house where Brian lives and called 911. I observed a minor scratch to the inside of Sarah's ear with dried blood. Sarah refused all medical aid. Sarah advised this is not the first dating violence incident with George, the last being on August the 28th of 2019, where George was arrested for battery/dating violence. Sarah completed all domestic violence paperwork, advised she would testify and prosecute. Sarah was provided a copy of the photo/injunction referral referencing this case number. I photographed Sarah's injuries and submitted those photographs into evidence via DataWorks referencing this case number. So we will probably use those photographs in court, you guys. Deputies made contact with Jorge Torres, the defendant, inside the apartment at Unit 3. George was hiding in the bathroom located in the upstairs master bedroom. George provided me the following verbal statement. George immediately uttered that he knew he was in trouble because he believed he was not allowed to be inside the residence. George was uncooperative when asked what had happened over the course of the evening, and George advised that Sarah will often hit him. However, he doesn't notify law enforcement. George advised that Sarah did not injure him physically this evening. George had no visible injuries. It says George advised him and Sarah had both been drinking over this evening. George was arrested for battery, dating violence, and transported to the Orange County Booking and Release Center without incident. I took no further action in this case. No bond. A probable cause determination is hereby made that the defendant committed the crimes charged in the complaint, which is battery, dating violence. No contact directly or indirectly with the victims. No possession of any weapons or firearms. Maintain a separate residence from the victim. Defendant is out on bond in case number blah. Defendant is out on bond in case number blah. There are no conditions of release which can reasonably assure the safety of the victim/community and the integrity of the judicial process. Another insolvency form. Let's see what he put on this one. On this one, he put he made $235 a week, or $230 a week. I mean, and he could have one of those things where his income ebbs and flows. I mean, that's because he is part-time. Okay, just to let you guys know, Robert Wesley was still his public defender here in September. The assistant state attorney under oath charges that Jorge Torres, on about the 4th day of September 2019 in said county and said and state, did in violation while on pretrial release in case number blah, 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 for an act of dating violence as defined in the Florida statute 784.046, willfully violated a condition of pretrial release. Okay, this is interesting. You guys, you know why this is interesting? Because the last one of these that we looked at said that he only weighed 120 pounds. In this particular one, dated 9/24 of 2019, currently in custody at the Orange County Jail. He stopped drinking and he was in custody for a good 20 days or whatever. And he's working on a road crew, so he's out getting exercise. He gained 20 pounds. So he was 140 pounds, the last documented thing we have before he died. He pled not guilty. Notice of supplementary discovery. 911 call disclosed and sent to defense on 10/10/2019. Photos disclosed and sent to defense on 10/10/2019. This stuff is going to probably come up too in her trial. All these 911 calls that she made for them to come back out, we're going to get to hear those too. All right, pretrial hearing. George was present and in custody. So was his attorney. He was there. His attorney was there October the 17th, 2019. So Sarah went in there again. Modify conditions to no hostile contact. The court did modify conditions to no hostile contact per the court. State of Florida, by the undersigned state attorney, enters a nolo prosecu in the above entitled. It's a formal notice of abandonment by a plaintiff or a prosecutor of all or part of a suit or action. Okay, so this is a dismissal by the prosecution. They came back and dismissed it. Okay, but here's what they said. It says that this type of dismissal is the same as dismissed. In most cases, it's a voluntary motion filed with the court to end legal proceedings against a defendant. So he was released the following day. But the thing was, he sat in jail from September the 9th to October the 18th for this past thing. He had $233 in court cost, plus $151 battery surcharge, $201 domestic violence surcharge, $50 to the state, and public defender lien of $50. So they set up a payment plan for him to pay $30 a month starting in November of 2019. Credit for time served, 62 days in the county jail. Court reporting probation, 365 days. He was on probation at the time of his death. You must complete a batterer's intervention program and be responsible for the payment of any cost incurred while receiving treatment unless waived. You must enroll in it within 60 days and successfully complete it within 60 days. He is to obtain a substance abuse evaluation. You must undergo a drug and alcohol evaluation, and if treatment is deemed necessary, you must successfully complete the treatment and be responsible for the payment of any cost incurred while receiving said evaluation and treatment, unless waived by the court, and you must do that within 30 days. He has to report to probation by the 21st of October, which is like 2 days away from this, at noon. 4 months later, Jorge Torres Jr. died at the hands of Sarah Boone. Our office received confirmation that the defendant was pronounced deceased on February 24th of 2020. The Orange County Probation Unit has closed interest in this case. Okay, so as you'll see here, of all of these calls that Sarah made, charges were dropped, either because they didn't have enough evidence or because Sarah said she would not prosecute or she would not cooperate with prosecution. The one that did stick was June the 18th, and that was the one at the end that in October, they let him go after he had spent so much time in jail. And they said, okay, time served, and you're going to pay the court fines. They gave him like a 30-day payment plan or a $30 payment plan, 1 year probation, batter intervention, substance abuse evaluation and treatment, and he was still in the probation phase because that was October. And when he passed away, he was still he probably got most of this taken care of, but he might have still been paying the court fines. Now, something that I found interesting was that of all these cases, all these times that she called 911, we have the body cam footage for July of 2018. We have the body cam footage for June 18th of 2019, but we don't have it for June 15th of 2019. And also on June 18th of 2019, as you could hear what I just read, there were 2 calls. They came out twice. So we don't have the first body cam of that either. And then the August 28th of 2019, we don't have that body cam either. And the September 4th, we do have that body cam. My point being, we've got 3 body cams missing here. And I would feel quite certain that they had their body cams on during these visits. They say that some of the most dangerous calls that police make are during DV situations. So it just makes sense that they would have their body cams on. So are they holding this stuff out because it's being redacted for court? Are we going to find out in court? Are we going to see these different ones? It could be. It could be the ones that we've already seen. They're not going to be playing those in court. I don't know. Another thing I wanted to show you guys too was when it comes to getting jail phone calls, someone on Reddit had gone in and tried to get them, and it says that they're not considered public record, so they won't release them. The 911 calls that I have requested from all of their incidents, I was told that they only keep them for a year and then they're gone. Now, we still have the fact that I'm sure the prosecution has them. I'm sure the clerk of courts could give us that information once I go in and ask for it. I don't know. So that's my next step on the 911 calls. Because we only have the one when she called after he had died. So I hope that really helps you guys keep things a little organized. And if you want to flip back to this every now and then, you go, okay, what was that? Oh, that's right. Carrie did a video on it. It's right here. I've also got my playlist organized so that I have all the IMS reports for Sarah in one playlist. And then I have also the body cam in one playlist as well. And then, of course, I have a full playlist that's all things Sarah Boone. Suitcase Sarah Boone. So that's it for now. Later this afternoon, you guys, I believe it's 1:20 p.m. We have the sentencing for Darrell Brooks. You guys need to be there with me. So I'll be live, and I hope you can join me then. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and feel free to leave a comment. Have a blessed day.